Welcome to Goldfinch Bio's interview series, The Feeder. We're speaking with people impacted by kidney disease and a wide range of experts who are driving change, innovation, and hope in the kidney space. In this episode, Dr. Tony Johnson, President and CEO of Goldfinch Bio, speaks with Jill, who is living with focal segmental glomerulosclerosis.
Jill, I'm really excited that you're joining us today and going to share some of your insights about what it's like to be a mum, be a working mum, have kidney disease and living with that. And I know that it brings a lot of challenges, but let's start off by hearing some of your insights, something about yourself.
Sure. Thanks for having me today. I am a wife and a mom in the Columbus, Ohio area, but I'm originally from Illinois, and I am a social worker, but I'm currently working as a career counselor, and I work with women that are in transition, helping them kind of find their way in the world of work. And I have a 6-year-old son, and we have a 6-month-old puppy, and we enjoy that very much.
Wow, that sounds like a pretty full life. I'd love to hear more about it, particularly about your family. And I hear you've got this photography business on the side. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I am a social worker by trade, and my husband is a science teacher, but together we have a side business as photographers, and he's the main photographer, and I help out with posing, and I'm the backup photographer, and we do a lot of weddings in the summer, and family portraits, senior pictures, and we really enjoy doing that together. So it was something we started a few years ago, and it's kind of taken off. And so if we, obviously with COVID, it's on pause right now, but eventually we'll get started back up again.
Yeah, I hope so. So, being a busy mom and managing life with kidney disease, can you tell us a little bit about that? When were you first diagnosed with kidney disease?
Sure. So I was 43 now, and I was first diagnosed at the age of 14. So I was in 8th grade, and I just moved to this town in Columbus, and we hadn't been here but a couple months, and I woke up one day and my face was really swollen, and that was kind of the first indication that something wasn't right.
I'm a physician scientist by training. I've been in clinical practice for almost 2 decades and looked after a lot of kidney patients. I worked in a kidney clinic, and I know firsthand just what it's like, when you're talking to patients who've just been diagnosed with kidney disease. It can be devastating. But tell us more about your experience and, what you did after you heard the diagnosis, and, what were you thinking at the time?
Yeah. I think as a 14-year-old, I didn't really understand. They first said that it was nephrotic syndrome, and I didn't know what that meant. I didn't really know what kind of impact that would have on me long term. I really think at the age of 14, I was more concerned about my appearance. I was very swollen, and then I was put on large doses of prednisone, which gave me quite the moon face, and that was very difficult in 8th grade to go to school looking like that. So missed a lot of school. I think I really thought for a long time that, this will go away, that this isn't forever. And I look back now, and I'm glad I didn't know then what I know now.
How did you cope with it at the time? Because, 8th grade's an important time in your life, and it must have been difficult making friends and socializing.
It was, especially being the new person at school and looking so strange, in my opinion. And it was really a hard year. I remember crying a lot. Definitely missed a lot of school that year because I'd wake up so swollen and just couldn't bring myself to go to school. And, obviously went enough and passed 8th grade just fine. But it was definitely a trying, emotional year.
Do you remember what treatments you received? How did they go? Were they helpful? often things are up and down a little bit
Yeah.
with treating the nephrotic syndrome. How was it for you?
Yeah, so one of the first things they tried was Cytoxin,
Mm.
and at the time was told that it could cause infertility, that it was a cancer drug, and I think my parents and I knew no different. We knew we were told that's what was the best option was. So we tried it. It didn't work. And then I was on, again, high doses of prednisone. That didn't work. I can't remember. I think that I was on prednisone for a really long time. And I wish I could remember. I think it just was a slow progression because I didn't have my first transplant for many years.
So tell us about that. I know eventually you had a few transplants.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about, that seesaw process as well?
Yeah. So, I think I missed out on a lot of normal social aspects of, high school because I never felt very well and was so swollen, which is a very uncomfortable feeling. I was often carrying anywhere up to 20 pounds of water retention. And so it didn't feel very good most of my high school years. Went to college. I went to Ohio University for social work and managed with, prednisone. I ended up on Epogen shots because I was anemic. I was on a lot of medications for blood pressure and cholesterol control. As your kidney function gets worse, you end up on many, many more medications. Yeah. And it wasn't until I was in grad school that the kidney finally failed and I ended up getting my first transplant. And my mom was my first living donor.
Wow, amazing. Mm-hmm. That must have been, exciting when, with your mom as your donor.
Yeah, it was very exciting. It was also really scary. Obviously, not knowing what to expect, thinking this is a very big surgery, worrying about the health and well-being of both myself, but also my mom. Yeah. So it was a very exciting, but yet scary time. And I really never thought that the FSGS would come back. That never crossed my mind. To me, this was going to be what, ended that disease for me. And that was far from the truth.
Tell us what it was like. I mean, were you on a fluid restriction, low protein diet, some of the things that really interfere with people's quality of life?
It's interesting. It's no one really ever talked to me about low protein diet until much later. So I wasn't doing that. Definitely restricting fluids because I was retaining so much. Watching my sodium intake significantly. Yeah. Still trying to get exercise, stay, as healthy as possible, and and sleeping a lot.
Got it. So fast forward, you had the first transplant, it was scary. Tell us what happened after that.
Yeah, so I had the transplant. It went very well. I came home after a week or two in the hospital. And very quickly, I started noticing swelling, edema, and had blood work done and was told I had a biopsy. And will never forget, I was in the hospital after the biopsy and because of complications was there longer. And a doctor stopped me in the hallway when I was taking a walk with my mom and told me the disease is back. And
oh my God.
Talk about
in the hallway.
Oh. Not really the best. That was a pretty big punch to the gut for me because that was, something I was, fervently praying for that would not be the case.
Of course.
And of course it was.
So what happened after that?
Lots of prednisone. And that's when I started plasma exchanges or apheresis treatments. And I did that a lot off and on with my mom's transplanted kidney. I had that kidney for 8 years and I did plasma exchanges many, many times throughout those 8 years. And that work, it would put in remission for about a year at a time.
Tell us a bit more about that because, it may be, I think, interesting to the Goldfinch team. Many may not realize how all-encompassing kidney disease can be, and how it makes you feel.
Yeah, it's not like it's isolated and your kidney doesn't work and that's it. It affects, cholesterol and high blood pressure, but a lot of GI issues. So oftentimes I haven't had an appetite in probably 20 years. And never, and then if I do eat, I don't feel well. And is that the disease? Is that all the medications I'm on? Who knows? But constant stomach upset, a lot of times feeling nauseous, chronic fatigue because I'm chronically anemic, and we've done lots of things to try and improve that, but not a lot of success.
So move forward to the next transplant. What happened then?
Yeah. So I was pretty stubborn and didn't believe the doctors when they said that my mom's transplant was really failing. And I got really, really sick and ended up on dialysis. And I actually ended up having a TIA as well. And so I had this TIA. They didn't even know what it was at first, but they just assumed my kidneys had failed. So they put me on dialysis. I was on dialysis for about 8 months. And I had another living donor that was a friend of mine.
And for the Goldfinch, for my Goldfinch colleagues who may not know what a TIA is, can you tell us what that was all about?
Yeah, so I had what I call like a minor stroke.
Right.
And there's still debate in my mind between the doctors and I of what caused that. But I was taking Epogen at the time, and that is a black box warning on that medication, and that medication is used to increase your red blood cells. I'm on it now because I'm anemic, but that is a risk that you can take with that medicine.
That's also pretty scary.
Mm-hmm. It was very traumatic. I think that's one of the unspoken things about chronic illness. Is the trauma that often goes along with it because of multiple things that may happen along this journey.
Yeah. You come to the point where you need another transplant. Where did that come from?
So my second transplant came from a very good friend of mine who was my youth group leader's husband, and he was just a very close friend, and he gave me his kidney, and it lasted a very long time. 11 years, even though the disease came back 2 weeks after the transplant.
How did you know that the disease had come back?
It was almost like replaying the first transplant. I came home, I had been home for a few weeks, and all of a sudden the edema is back. And same thing, blood work, a kidney biopsy, and once again, told in the hospital in a very nonchalant manner that it's back. And it's a very similar experience.
So not a great experience. Did you get any feedback on what the doctors thought was going on? Why last 11 years and then suddenly fail?
I didn't, but what I can tell you is that I was doing so well. I felt very good. I was the healthiest I'd been. And then we had a son, and we adopted our son at birth. But he was in daycare, and he was bringing home a lot of germs. And because I'm so compromised, I kept getting sick, and I was just consistently sick for months. And I do believe that is what allowed this disease to kind of flare up again. Yeah.
So I imagine that meant you needed dialysis.
Well, I was able to get matched again with another living donor for the third time and avoid dialysis this time, that was my number one mission, because dialysis was so horrific for me the first time. I mean, it was really horrific. And I just wanted to avoid it at all costs. And luckily I was able to do so.
Tell us about dialysis. Why is it so unpleasant, so difficult and disruptive?
I did it in clinic, and so it was hemodialysis, and I had a central venous catheter, and it was 3 times a week, and I was the youngest person in the room, and most of the people, I shouldn't say most, quite a few people were missing limbs, and so it scared me because I thought that that was what I was expecting for myself next. And at one point, I was being sexually harassed by one of the
Oh my God.
technicians.
Oh,
And you're attached to a chair, you can't go anywhere. And that
yeah.
was a repeated thing that kept happening. I mean, you don't
The last
feel
thing you
good.
want, right?
Oh, it was a very, very uncomfortable situation. The dialysis centers, it wasn't like a nice, inviting place, and you spend a lot of hours there. So it was a very depressing time for me. I didn't feel well. I did not have energy. I slept for about 8 months off and on. I couldn't work during that time. So it was a very difficult 8 months, and so I was determined to never do that again.
And so tell us about the third transplant.
Yeah, and so then I was matched, and my youngest sister, it was a match, and she gave me my third transplant, the one that I have now.
Wow. So were you, I guess for your third transplant, your anxiety level must have been pretty high.
It was definitely high. Maybe not as much scared about the transplant, even though that's always such a scary experience, but so worried that the disease was going to return a third time. And I think the biggest issue I dealt with was guilt that I might ruin another person's kidney. Not by my own doing, but just the fact that people are so gracious to give me this kidney, and then because of this disease, it gets ruined every time. I struggle with that a lot.
It's hard.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about the impact on your life. You've now still got your third kidney?
I do. This time the disease came back within 2 days.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so we did plasmapheresis several times before the transplant, and then as soon as it came back, they gave me rituximab infusion, but that didn't do anything. And this time the disease is resistant to prednisone. We have not been able to put it in remission, and I'm doing LDL pheresis, which is slightly different than plasmapheresis. I'm actually the first person at this hospital in Ohio to try it for FSGS, but I'm doing that and have been doing that since the transplant.
And how long have you been doing it for?
I do it twice a week, and I've been doing it off and on since the transplant. The transplant was about 2.5 years ago.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
And overall, in this context, you've got the disease that has come back. What impact has it had on your job, being a mum, being a wife, just trying to live your life?
Partly because of age, partly because of, I think, the toll that having this disease has taken on my body. Everything is harder right now. I'm really tired. Life is hard.
Yeah, it is hard.
I work 35 hours a week. I have a 6-year-old. We do have that part-time job that right now is on hold. But everything it feels like it takes more effort and more energy than it should normally take someone.
Are you able to connect with other people with FSGS?
Yeah, that's been something that's really been helpful. There's some groups on Facebook that I've connected with other women that have FSGS, and that's been a very helpful support. I got to meet some of them a couple of years ago, which was helpful. And through NephCure, I've met people. So it's very helpful to connect with other people that understand and can relate, so that I don't feel so, I don't know what the word is, but sometimes I feel like, this strange individual that no one can understand. And so it's helpful when you can find others that do.
For a young person to suffer with the symptoms you suffer with, I I have a good understanding of really how horrific it is. And then to have the disease come back 3 times, it's really hard. But I think you're doing a phenomenal job.
Well, thank
Just
you.
surviving, is a real success. And
Yeah.
to be a mum and have a 6-year-old, a wife, it's fabulous, I think.
Thanks.
I think it's important for you to know that Goldfinch Bio is a kidney company, and we're truly committed. We're passionate about discovering and developing new medicines that we hope can one day prevent the progression of kidney disease. We're focused on FSGS and other severe kidney diseases, but we really want to help patients not need dialysis or transplants.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? What would you like the team at Goldfinch to know as we continue to pursue these efforts?
I'm thankful for, companies like yours that are doing this hard work, because there's so many people, not, myself included, that are struggling every day to live life and to live it with some sense of quality. And so, just to keep up the hard work to help us to find solutions, because dialysis and transplants aren't great solutions.
What do you think we could do as a company for patients like you?
I mean, I think things like this are helpful. I think hearing patients and their stories and the struggles, because there's a lot of horrible side effects that come with many medications that make life extra difficult. Prednisone is one that I've had horrific long-term damage from. And so just knowing that and keeping that in mind when you're developing medications, that there are some side effects that are just really not tolerable.
What do you hope for the future? What does it look like for Jill Hammonds over the next few years?
Yeah. I will always hope for a cure, always. Even on days when sometimes it feels like there's little hope, I always still hold on to that. I'm at stage F. I'm at stage 3B. And so, most likely dialysis is in my future. Who knows how soon? And so, my we're planning for that because we have to, because I don't know that I will be able to work while on dialysis. And, wanting to maintain the best quality of life that I can and be around as long as I can for my son and my husband. And so I'm still hoping for a better option because I really don't want to live on dialysis.
I'm with you. We're all with you. We really are, rooting for people like you. And every day we're talking about what we can do to improve things. We're very focused on discovering, developing drugs, as I said, but we're really committed to having a positive impact on the lives of patients with kidney disease, particularly FSGS, which, as you know, is our first focus.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate your time. This was phenomenal. You've been, very articulate, transparent, informative. This will be, really positive for the Goldfinch Bio team, and I'm sure will motivate us to work even harder for you and people with diseases like you.
Well, thank you. I really do appreciate all that you're doing.